There we go. Yeah, g'day everyone and welcome to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. Live all over social media, here to recap NRL round 27. The final time this year we will recap 8 games for you guys. Winnie, it was a huge weekend, some upsets, some results we didn't see coming. Ultimately though, how was your weekend, mate? And you ready to rip in?
I'm a bit deflated, mate, because watched my team there play finals a week early, elimination final basically in Newcastle, and look, well done to the Knights. We might as well start with that game. Better on the day, some tough bunker calls. I guess we can get into it. I'd like to hear some unbiased opinions on those, because I would say straight away, just a comment that always comes up in my mind, but I don't think I've said it on the pod. When they look for obstruction, they talk about outside shoulder versus inside shoulder. Well, the inside shoulder of one defender is the outside shoulder of the next defender. So when a lead runner deliberately tries to dart in towards the goalpost to not obstruct the defender, I guess if there's a small gap to the next defender, you're naturally going to bump into them. Could it be a different game if the Dolphins got first blood? I think Ponga was the best player on the field. You know, the Knights, you may call them a one-man team, but if that one man gets so involved, then I have to give credit to Ponga because he was everywhere, laid on to 2 tries for the Knights. I was looking for more involvement from the hammer, from Herbie. Finally got a try from the hammer late. And what I've it's only been a few minutes since I watched my Finns get perilously close to a maiden finals berth but miss out. What I ultimately would say is that the Dolphins didn't really lose their chance to make finals today. I really feel it was those. There's a few games and you can't win all the close ones. Like the Dolphins did win a close one over the Sharks, close one over the Cowboys, lost a golden point to the Raiders. Like, I get that it goes both ways, but a 14-point lead blown to an Origin playerless Panthers and a 14-point lead blown to your Gold Coast Titans at Suncorp in back-to-back weeks. And if the Dolphins had won just one more game this year, their points differential was better than the Knights. That, not even to mention the Dolphins lost to the Knights at Suncorp as well with no Ponga. So they ultimately just have to look at themselves, and if they could have just taken care of the games they should have won, just one more of those, they're probably playing finals next week. It is extremely disappointing, but at the end of the day, it was that close. How many teams finished like with 12 wins, right? It was like 2 or 3, you know, and as we know, there were like 4 teams still in contention this weekend. So it's exciting. And there's always going to be a team that's very disappointed. But Newcastle, to keep the Dolphins scoreless for 70 minutes, you know, credit to them.
Very impressive, mate. Condolences. I don't know how it feels to get knocked out of potential finals, but I know how it feels to watch my team lose, and I know that feeling quite often. Over on Instagram, we've got Paddy in the house. Harry says, g'day. Dan drops by and says, sorry, Winnie. Jared says, how do I feel about the Titans finals matchups? And, of course, we are a live show, guys, so please do get involved in the comments like our man Colt does every single weekend. He took Nakul's try score and Olakuatu and my cheeky call in Nakora for $10 odds. This is why I love Colt. He knows a good bet when it is there to be found. Let's start on the Knights Dolphins games. It's fresh in everyone's mind, and we'll get it out of the way for you. I'll give you my thoughts first. Please jump in whenever or come in afterwards. I think in the first half, mate, I actually really got Origin vibes from this. Like, it didn't quite have the Origin intensity that you expect, but the Origin effort was there from both sides. You could tell that it did mean a lot to both of these teams. I want to start on the Dolphins' first try that was disallowed, not to be controversial or to stir up anything online, but I just feel it was a Knights defensive decision. You really do see Jack Cogger there make the first contact with the Dolphins' lead runner. And my issue with it, Winnie, it's the fact that we're in round 27 now, and we still don't have a level of consistency between common sense and black and white ruling when it comes to obstructions. Now, that one there was a black and white ruling. There was contact made, any contact, whatever, that's the rule. But we saw a common sense approach applied as recent as Friday night when Angus Crichton made that line break back through his own players against the Rabbitohs. So, again, I just hate that we're in finals and we're still talking about this. We get to halftime. Dolphins are down 6-0. And I could see Wayne Bennett in the sheds on the Fox League cameras, and I just thought he is going to play an ace card here. This is going to be some second half from the Dolphins. They are in this game, which was ill-advised by myself. And as the game did go more and more onwards, I started to feel nervous because the Dolphins' attack was very underwhelming. And don't get me wrong, the Knights' defense was unrelenting as well, so I will give them full credit. But I thought they were unable to build pressure in the Knights' end because they just kept giving away silly penalties and letting them out. That zapped their energy. But where I really thought the Dolphins got this wrong, and not to get too technical here on the show, is their attack was left to right, shifting of the football. And we had a Knights side who never shot out of the line. They simply held, slid with the ball carrier, and allowed the inside defense to apply that pressure. And if you do that successfully, the sideline essentially becomes an extra defender for you because eventually you're going to run out of room to slide that football, right? The difference in this game for me was the Dolphins had 3 playmakers on the field in Avarillo, Nikorima, and Sean O'Sullivan, but it was too many Indians and not enough Chiefs. They needed a halfback that was going to take the ball to the line and actually engage someone from the Knights defensive line, make them make a decision. Do I rush out here and try to shut this down and try to exploit that? Because the 3 halves just combined, just shifting it left to right, very, very basic stuff. And ultimately, I think they missed Isaiah Katoa today. But I do understand, in Wayne Bennett's defense, you can't bring your halfback back after you've dropped him and the replacement puts on 40 on the Broncos. But that was the key difference for me, Winnie. The Broncos shot up out of the line, and that side-to-side play worked really well. But when it wasn't working against the Knights, with their 3 halves on the field, no one took any initiative to adjust the point of attack to just even a simple unders ball, just changing that direction at the line. So, yeah, it was a really opportunity missed there by the Dolphins. Quickly on the Knights, I'll actually put my hand up. I wrote them off for ages ago. I reckon like round 15 on this show, I said they ain't playing finals this year because their attack's not good enough. So, pie all over my face. They proved me wrong. They were awesome today. And my best friend actually goes for the Knights, Winnie. So ironically, Knights fans dislike me for that prediction, but I'm actually going for them now in the final series. They were the better team today. Despite all the criticism I just offered for the Dolphins, the Knights were the better team. That criticism is reflective of what the Dolphins turned out. Whereas for the Knights, I think they gave us even more than we expected, particularly in defense today, where they were able to hold the Dolphins out for a large period of time, mate. Sorry that went so long. How did you see this game?
Yeah, I think I probably wrote Newcastle off that moment where they lost to Brisbane after Origin. That's probably around the same time as you, and Bradman Best tore his hammy that game. It just didn't look like it's going to be their season. But I did say a month ago when I was looking at the ladder and a friendly run home and saying Knights are going to be favoured, catching dead teams, no offence, but catching Titans, Rabbitohs. And we didn't know if the Dolphins would be playing for anything in round 27, but we knew it would be in Newcastle. So the Knights were going to be favoured their final 3 home games. They still would have needed some help, but they got it, obviously, as we know now. The Dragons lost their final 3 of the season. So, I mean, the Knights, even 3 weeks ago, were like $8 to make the 8. So hopefully some people found that. Again, to critique the punting aspect of this game was hard for me to kind of separate heart from head. I've done it all year long with the Dolphins, but when it's like the biggest game of the season, but I suppose like the obvious leans which I've discussed, I mean, they could have been plays. It's just play unders because it is like a finals intensity for all intents and purposes. It is a finals match. And the other way to play it was the either team 1-10, 1-12, which is easy to say now, but they both won. But if we don't play them, then it's my fault for not taking that. And you talk about the Finns being a bit side to side, and whenever they did get the ball to their best game-breaking players like Herbie or Hammer, apart from at the very end where he just got a little bit of space and showed what he could do, that the Knights were able to cover him up. And really, it was the agility of Trey Fuller that was the most dangerous player all day. And I did think that the Dolphins looked threatening early, but again, you don't get that call, and the Knights repel them, and the Knights have fought hard enough to earn a trip to the finals. And it go back to Kalen Ponga, being the best player on the field. If your defense is that good, your attack doesn't need to be great to get you through. So I think we should, we've already at the 10-minute mark with 1 game in. You know what? Let's go through, obviously, the other 7 games. Let's start with Thursday. But a lot of people already want to think about the finals. So if you don't mind, what I'll do is I'll bring up the 4 finals just to open it to the audience. And I'll mention the finals and the lines, and people can just say in the comments if they've got any early strong feelings, and we can probably riff off that. So Friday night, no, that can't. Oh, sorry, I pulled up 365, and I swear they've got it in the wrong order. Is Friday night? You tell me, Clarkey. Friday night must be Roosters Panthers.
Yep, I believe Saturday was.
So I've got it here. So Panthers host Roosters, and the Panthers are a 6.5 point favourite on Friday night. Then on Saturday afternoon, the Storm hosts the Sharks, and the Storm are a 9.5-point favourite. Saturday night, the Dogs host Manly because Manly lost today. They'll get a huge crowd there at Accor, and the Dogs are ever so slight favourites, call them 1-point favourites. And then on Sunday, a rare Townsville Sunday game, but due to the Knights playing today, North Queensland hosts Newcastle, and North Queensland is a 5.5-point favourite. Does anything stand out to you, Clarkey, or anyone in the comments?
Not at this stage. The finals are kind of games where you really have to deep dive it because it is kind of a new season. And you guys know when I give you my breakdowns here, I do go a lot off season stats. But I think once you get to finals, it's almost like a whole new season, to be completely fair. Did anything stand out for you?
Possibly, but sorry to do this to people, but I am going to reserve my judgment because if I say it, unless I give it as an official play, I might just be influencing a market that I can't take on Tuesday. It's been hard enough this year. So I'll probably be the only person that won't weigh in, but I'll give you everything I've got Tuesday. We may even do a bonus final show. We're looking at that Thursday night, right? But I should also say round 27, very unfriendly round to me on the punt. We did win the mixed matchup, but we went 1-3 on best bets to end the year. So we end the year under 50% the regular season. And I thought that round 27 summed up my year pretty well. Because out of my 4 players, I had one that was a great bet that won by a mile with Cowboys over Dogs. I had one that was a really bad bet that didn't get close, which was Manly to beat Cronulla. And then I had 2 that were every chance. I mean, I had the Roosters laying 5.5 first half. That at one stage, they're leading the game by 26 points, but we're only up 4 at halftime. Misconversion, and we lose the bet. Typical this year. And I had the Dragons laying 2.5. And they were up 24-6. I thought they're going to win by 40. And it's a deflected kick by none other than Corey Horsburgh back into his arms. Because remember, the Dragons were up 4 at that stage for a winning try. So I just feel like the worst I could have possibly gone this round is 1-3 with those bets. And I'm not saying they were all great tips, but to get the absolute worst possible result, I should be used to it by now, I suppose. It's been one of those years for me.
I wish I could report better for Clarkey's collect. That does miss again. Unfortunately, it looked easy enough in the first game. Storm looked awesome. And I'll tell you what, Winnie, I actually, or maybe I should get into the actual breakdown here because this is part of it, my thoughts with Clarkey's collect. I can tie it in almost. So let's go to game 1, Thursday night. Storm beat the Broncos 50 points to 12. And I just thought, what a performance by the Storm, attitude-wise. Over the past 3 weeks of footy, they have convinced me that they are my premiership pick. Where other sides rock up in the final round and just try to coast to an easy victory with one eye ahead in the future, this Storm side, even with their quote-unquote B team, still turned up with the right attitude in their opponents' backyards. And I thought that was really commendable. Because the Broncos, although they still do have a pretty good team, right? And they would have been desperate to finish their season on a positive note at home. Nothing to lose for them. This could have been a dangerous Broncos side, but they just absolutely demolished them. The first 10 minutes, I thought that was a great contest, but I more or less was seeing the screws turning over for the Broncos, and you were just waiting for them to break. And ultimately, with the Storm's X factor they have through their spine, they were able to break them there. And once they broke them and smelt blood in the water, they absolutely put their foot down. 13 line breaks were produced here. They only missed 17 tackles. Brilliant display of rugby league. And I'll finish by saying that scoreline's actually a little bit generous, Winnie. They probably left 1 or 2 tries out there, in all fairness, to tie this into Clarkey's collect. So we get this huge win here, and I only need him to win by 10. And you know what I started thinking, Winnie? All right, the Roosters and the Panthers are watching this. They're getting ready to send their message as well. It wasn't to be. It just wasn't to be, unfortunately. So another loss there in Clarkey's collect, mate, unfortunately. How'd you see this game from the Storm, though?
So let me clean up what I said before. Sorry, the bookies had the games in the wrong order. And I had read that it seemed to be shaping up that the NRL didn't want to put the Cowboys on Sunday, but had no choice with the turnaround. But people are correcting me, so thank you. That's the beauty of being live. They're able to put Bulldogs Manly on Sunday Arvo. And that means that the Cowboys nights will be Saturday night, which is much more friendly for Townsville and the people that travel in. I suppose it's you're making the Knights back up 6 days, so you're putting the Knights on a shorter backup, but it would have been the case for Manly if you played Manly on Saturday. So either way, it's a tough ask to play Sunday in the final game of the regular season and then play finals and have a short turnaround. But it's that's the way the draw goes sometimes. As for the Storm, they got to play Thursday and then watch it all unfold and then get a Saturday game. So, a beautiful turnaround for Melbourne, which is one of the reasons why the Storm played as close to a full strength side as they could. And Faulongo might have got hurt, but it's such a luxury. I don't even know if Faulongo could have fit into their best 17. Just crazy to say, because Pappy's probably fine. Xavier Coates came back, and did he get a hat-trick in the end? He got at least a couple, right? And he was rampaging. Wishart has been one of the form players in the comp. He can't make the starting side, so he's on the bench. So I don't even know where Faulongo would have been. I don't know if you could carry Faulongo and Wishart, but that just goes to show how stacked this Melbourne team is, especially with backline and spine members. They can't fit them all in. So I've said this before. Other clubs need to be really watching that situation closely and maybe trying to sign these boys, particularly Faulongo, but Wishart as well. But so Melbourne just came in and just wanted to be sharp. You could see the intensity in Bellamy because they're up like 24-0 and Meaney spills a put down and Bellamy's fuming. He demands perfection. As for the Broncos, just lacking energy, a dead team. And that was one point I probably didn't make about the Dolphins. Someone wrote in the comments they played their grand final last week. I did say that in the preview. That would be my concern with the Dolphins this week is have they already played their grand final? But another one that I think you've brought up through this season, Clarkey, is the false confidence aspect. Is some people believed in the Dolphins today because they looked so good last week. But did they only look good because they played Brisbane? And everyone looks good at Brisbane. And if I need to have another whinge here, how did Brisbane score 36 unanswered points up in North Queensland 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago to sink my best bet? I don't understand. Has everyone seen what the Cowboys have done the last month or done since that game? Has everyone seen what Brisbane's done since that game? And the Cowboys were up like 18-6 and we're laying like 6.5. I don't know. I said at the time, I don't know how that happened, and I still don't know. Just like it's one of the most ridiculous anomalies of the season. And just, of course, it hurt a best bet, and it ties into Brisbane. Did run out of troops. Kevy has a point that there was $4 million sitting on the sidelines, but he challenged the team to play with pride for the jersey, and Brisbane gave up 50 at home and had a horrendous home record this year. So there's a lack of spirit in this team, and I definitely should have been on Melbourne. I regretted that massively on Tuesday, probably that I didn't give it out in the recap when it was 7.5 before team lists. And then, by principle, you don't want to take a line when it's doubled, but Melbourne could cover any line they wanted in this one.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, man, there are so many games this week where maybe it was at halftime or maybe it was at full time, but I just finished and I was like, in hindsight, I missed a bet there. I missed a bet, a play there at least. And it was the same for this next game, mate, and that was the Spoon Bowl, where the Eels defeat the Tigers 60 points to 26. And this was the most West Tigers way for the West Tigers to win their third consecutive wooden spoon. Off a bye against a side that travelled to Queensland the week before and is now travelling to your home stadium. They get a bye, whereas the Eels competed for the full 80 against the Dragons last week. Not only did the Tigers fail to show up for their home fans, they actually embarrassed their home fans by conceding 60 points. Now, I feel like because of the humor and the fun nature around the whole Spoon Bowl that we experienced, no one's really called out how bad this is by the Tigers. Like, come on, man. You're trying to avoid a third consecutive wooden spoon and you concede 60. Like, if you concede 60 under any circumstances, it's horrible. Let alone the shame of being the worst team for 3 consecutive years in a row. And it's not like, everything went against them, mate. Dylan Brown, their best player, he fails to finish the game. Will Penasini, their best attacking player, he fails to finish the game. Their captain, Clint Gutherson, we find out post-game he's got 3 broken ribs and a torn quad. He scores 2 tries on you. Like, what more did the Tigers need in their favor to show up here? I don't want to absolutely slam their season overall. I'm just being critical of this performance because overall I actually did think they showed some improvements this year. But if I'm narrowing into this game in particular, absolutely dreadful. Over the fence to the Eels, I think their last 2 games have been a positive way to finish their season. On paper, still a very strong side, and I certainly did not see them scoring 104 points on the Dragons and Tigers. I know they're not the hardest of oppositions in the NRL with what we've seen, But that's still, they were 17th at one point. That's 104 points in 2 weeks. So credit to the Eels for there. Both opponents had a lot to play for, but only the Eels showed up, in my opinion. And my final point was when I broke this one all down from the stats base, I said on the preview show, I can't find a play for the overs and unders because I'm not sure if they will show up with a defensive mindset or it'll just be a points fest. And I couldn't find that read. Once I got to full time on this game, I thought, what was I thinking? The obvious play was overs. Neither of these sides have really shown us this year they can win a game with defense. And certainly, maybe they have, but nothing jumps out of my mind. They've only won with their attack. Take the Eels the week before, 44-40. So I did think I missed a pretty big read there, and I'm interested if anyone else took the overs, unders in this one, mate. How do you break this one down for us, though?
So there was 84 points in the Eels game last week, and there was actually more points this week. But it is always easy to say in hindsight. I mean, didn't these sides meet around Easter time? And Gutho missed the kick, and wasn't the final score like 17-16? So,
it was.
But realistically, I've said it for a few weeks that the Eels are just an over team because the way that they want to play. And while it went over, there was a case for unders, as Ryan comments he was on under 54 and up. The case for unders was that this could be like a finals intensity because it was a sold-out crowd, because usually at this time of the year, bottom 4 teams playing in meaningless games, there's just not the same level of desperation and you just get a few softer tries. But there shouldn't have been that the case in this one because it was so important. I mean, the commentator, I can't remember who the commentator was, if it was Warren Smith on Friday night, said something to the effect early on that arguably this is the biggest game for the West Tigers in 13 years. So I think he's saying since they made the finals, this is their biggest. But how do you concede 60 at home if it's even one of your most important games? So I'm with you. That's deplorable. Benji said after the game, it's a little bit my fault because I told the boys go out there and enjoy your footy and play fearless, which led to more errors. And then without the ball, we got torched. But even without the ball and even making a lot of errors and even telling the players to play a bit more carefree, it's still pretty embarrassing. And I thought Benji tried to spin it positively. We've debuted a lot of youngsters, but it's still pretty poor. As for Para, you got to commend them, the fact that they lost key troops through the year. I mean, you mentioned losing Brown. The news today is a partial ACL tear, which is a lot better than a complete tear, not requiring the reconstruction. But that would have been brutal news. I was just thinking to myself, what's going through Jason Ryle's mind? When he takes the job, he's trying to retain Blaze Talangi. Talangi's like, no, thanks. I get to play in the halves alongside Nathan Cleary for the next 5 years. See ya. And then whether Moses wants to stay there long term, he's got Gutherson on massive money, but Gutherson's not an elite fullback anymore. Now you get Dylan Brown potentially might be out till mid-year next year, but hopefully that's not the case. His injury in this game didn't really influence the game because I think Para already had about 50 on the board, or if not more, when Brown went out. But the Eels to go over to New Zealand, get the win, to beat a Dragon side that was playing for their season, to go and win at Campbelltown, and as you say, guys are playing busted. They could have shut it down for the end of the year, and get healthy for preseason and stuff. But it shows that there was a level of pride, and in fact, Para's win got them above not only the Tigers but Souths as well. So it was still a nightmare season for Para, as we know, and Brad Arthur losing his job there earlier. Tough ask for anybody in Barrett's role to be that caretaker coach. But ultimately, the factors that made Para the favourite, why I didn't play Tigers, was, the leadership and the experience. It showed in this game. Caesar gets ruled out before kickoff as well, so that didn't help in terms of, decision-making for West. But ultimately, you do have to say that's extremely disappointing Tigers. Now, I've seen, just to have one more word on the Tigers, seen a bit of positivity of look how different the team's going to be next year. I mean, Luai, awesome signing. Taruva is a pretty good signing. It sounds like they'll get Jack Bird, but they're losing Yuto Kamanu in the forwards. Are they signing any gun forwards next year?
Royce Hunt,
I've seen people saying, "Oh, it's going to be such a different team next year." It's not going to be that different. It's pretty much just add Luai in the halves and see how much better he makes them. I had an interesting conversation with Tristan this week putting up some extra spoon markets, and I said, what's the Tigers going to be for the spoon next year? Like, would they'd be a little short of $10 odds? I'm kind of thinking a couple of years ago, the Tigers were $13 for the spoon when Appy came, and people kind of had that optimism. And Tristan said, I've got them closer to $3.50. I've still got the Tigers as favourites for the spoon next year. Like, who else should be favourites for the spoon? And I start to think, well, who else is around there? Souths aren't going to get the spoon, right? Eels are there. You know what I mean? And so is it Titans? But even Titans would like to think they're going to be better. So that the Tigers are the favourites for the spoon next year to win 4 in a row, as sad as that sounds.
Yeah, well, that actually is sad. When you break it down, actually, $3.50 probably is a fair price there. Just quickly on Luai, I can see the hesitation there as well. Like, he's a he's a half that plays really well behind a powerful forward pack. It allows him to skip left to right and pick those deficiencies in the defensive line. But you're right, their forwards, they've lost Udowi Kamara and placed them with Royce Hunt. If they get Corey Horsburgh,
Royce Hunt, fair enough.
But
yeah, I mean, that's something, but it's a downgrade to me.
Oh, 100%, man. And Nathan Cleary and Daly Chervitz can play together. If it's behind a weak forward pack that isn't going forward, then ultimately it doesn't matter. And I promise this will be my final point, mate. The team I feel most sorry for from Spoon Bowl is actually Fiji Bharti. They'll lose Api Coruscant for the whole 3 games of their Pacific Bowl. And, when we look at these emerging nations like Papua New Guinea, Cook Islands, and Fiji Bharti, they need players like Api there to help them grow their skill sets.
Because of the dangerous throw.
Yeah, so he'll serve his 3-game suspension.
And he won't serve an NRL suspension.
No, he'll just Fiji miss out more. So it just sucks. It really sucks for that nation.
Bad for New Zealand too, unfortunately. Dylan Brown will miss the championship.
100%. That's horrible for New Zealand because the halves partner is not 100% known. And I did see a stat that like over 50% of players that suffer a partial ACL tear do go on to fully rupture it, even after the rehab work's been done. So,
and the one that comes to mind is Sam Walker.
Yes,
had a
exactly.
partial rupture last year, did it this year. And since we're talking New Zealand halves, I know we're bouncing around, we're taking too long, but I don't think either of us mentioned, or sorry if you did, I didn't catch it, but how good Jerome Hughes was on Thursday night. And I feel like he's absolutely deserving, and I assume that he will win the Dally M this year.
I agree. I thought Teddy was awesome in this game as well. But the thing is, I think Teddy will get, he gets my 3 points in this game, and Hughes is going to get my 3 points. But Hughes played the better game. It's just the nature of the Dally M that it will remain a super tight race, mate. So let's.
But Hughes deserves it, right? As good as Teddy's been, best player, even on a best team that has lots of other players that do pinch votes. I'd also probably argue Bellamy Coach of the Year. But if you want to give it to Serraldo, they finished the year a little colder, the Dogs. And obviously Flano may have been in the discussion 3 weeks ago. For me, Bellamy probably Coach of the Year too.
I think that's absolutely fair. Hughes has been unbelievable this year. Roosters, they beat the Rabbitohs 36 points to 28. Now, I feel like, and I was the same actually. When I first looked at this scoreline, I thought that's not good for the Roosters. But then I stepped back a little bit, and of course I was naturally a little bit disappointed at full time, let's say, because Clarkey's collect did miss. And look, they conceded 28, but let's break it down a little bit further. In reality, they only conceded 10 points in the opening 71 minutes. In the final 9 minutes, they did take Luke Keary off the field, and they clocked off. You could tell they clocked off. They thought the game was essentially won by a significant margin. South probably brought it a little bit closer than the Chooks would have liked, scoring 18 points in 9 minutes. But I thought that overall, if you break this game down, the Roosters defense was pretty sound, and largely Souths were probably underwhelming, which matches the theme of their season, if we're being absolutely honest. I feel like we can move Rabbitohs to the side. The team we need to dissect here is the Roosters. Did they show me enough to still be considered premiership contenders? I think they did, but only just. No doubt they need to go to another level on this. But the reason why I'm going to give them a pass mark, Winnie, is because they did have half their spine changed, and they still managed to score 36 points. And in tune with what's made the Roosters so strong this year, it has been their ability to score points. So they still achieved that mark. Defensively, they only missed 25 tackles, and they were solid for 71 minutes, like I said, defensively. So there is enough evidence there to think that they still can compete with these top sides. Thought their attack was dangerous enough, all things considered. We got to see some of their depth options as well. And don't forget, they were missing both their regular wingers and Lindsay Collins. So they will improve again next week. All in all, they did what they needed to do. They had to win to give themselves a chance at a home final. They miss out, but I think it was impressive enough for me to still say they are a hope at the title, but no doubt lower than what they were when Smith and Walker were healthy. I think that goes without saying, mate. How do you see this game, and how do you rate the Roosters coming into finals afterwards?
So this is my first best bet of the round, and this best bet alone could almost epitomise my season. So I take the Roosters. I thought it was actually a really good spot for the Roosters to put up a statement win, to play well when a lot of people had written them off. And I didn't know Dom Young would get rested. I didn't know Lindsay Collins would since be withdrawn. I can't remember if I knew Daniel Tupou was out for the game. Maybe we did know that one. But anyway, you lose some Origin international quality. Okay. Still come out and basically dominate the game. I mean, the only reason the Roosters didn't cover the first half, and it was 14-10, was discipline. I mean, Spencer Leniu dropped the ball 3 times in the first 9 minutes himself. And the amount of penalties, between errors and penalties, it had to be over 20 by the Roosters, just handing Rabbitohs possession. I mean, Rabbitohs got a 5th tackle penalty that then allowed them to score a try through Cody Walker. The Roosters answer that try. If Swalei kicks either of the sideline conversions, we cover the first half line. Fine, we don't get it. And you'll ultimately tell me, well, the line was 10.5. You took first half line, like you didn't cover either way. I mean, I avoided second half for a reason, because I knew the Roosters would have a bit of an eye next week. So I do think it's a little bit of a forgive, and it's a little bit understandable that the Rabbitohs ran in those late tries. And it is worth noting it's kind of what we might call in American sport like garbage time, right? Where we're not going to learn a lot. And I'm not going to say, oh, Roosters have no chance of finals because their defense isn't up to it. Like, I completely agree. They clocked off a bit early. But this is a game that the Roosters, straight after halftime, try. I'm like, thanks very much, boys. And we didn't cover by 1.5. So we got to see the debut of Nawonga Witawa. I thought I was going to nail it. Nawonga Nitawaze leaping for the opening try, which was pretty. Do you want to have a go? Have you been practicing?
Mark, Nawonga. No, I stuffed it already. You either get it first go or you don't. It's as simple as that.
I mean, the commentator's nightmare. Even if you practice, like in the moment when you're on the spot, it's not easy. Dan Ganane, he nailed it first time, and he said, "Remember the name." I mean, that leaping ability, that was pretty special. So I still wonder. Sandon Smith played in the halves for this game, but I still wonder if Sandon Smith could be a utility, and you could move Manu closer to the ball, let Kiri run the show, because when you bring Dom Young and Tupou back into this game, could Nawonga Nitawaze play centre? Potentially. Exciting athlete anyway. Geez, I tell you, the Wallabies could have used him. I don't know if you saw that. Side note, they beat Argentina 20-3, and they lose like 63-23. So anyway, I'm sure the 10 million they spent on Swalei will fix that. But Swalei, I was worried as well because he was clutching his arm again early in this one, but seemed to be a stinger, a burner, whatever. Got through the game. So it was a bit of a worrying game for the Roosters because it's like that heightened emotions when they play Rabbitohs. And the Rabbitohs had nothing to lose. So I felt like the Rabbitohs could really get in the niggle and, put some shots on or whatever. It wouldn't really matter. And the Roosters had to make sure they kept their tempers under control and, nobody gets suspended. So ultimately, job done. Roosters won, which made sure they wouldn't have to go to Melbourne in week 1 of the finals. And as we suggested 1 week ago, mate, after the absolute carnage against Raiders, those injuries have probably shifted the likelihood or shifted the balance of probability against Penrith in a finals game by 6 points. And I think it would have been a pick'em game if Sam Walker and Radley and Smith were available, but it's Roosters plus 6.5. That's not no chance, but it is significantly less chance. It's a taller task for sure, especially going into Penrith Park.
Definitely. That was a nice early call. They were actually getting that line absolutely spot on. Let's move it along, mate, to game 4. And this was one we had a best bet also. The Raiders beat the Dragons 26 points to 24. Now, the Dragons, if you guys missed this game, shot out of the gates. It was 18-0 after 11 minutes. They were going as easy as you like. They were showing fantastic attacking prowess. It looked like they were against a Raiders side that had just run out of gas. And keep in mind, it was a Raiders side who defended the Roosters to only 12 points last week, who were the top attacking team. Dragons were past that in 11 minutes. It looked like a side that had no expectation. A weight was off their shoulders, and they were here to play footy. Even at halftime, they go in 24-10, more than a 2 converted try advantage. Their opponent in the Raiders had given everything in their past two to get past the Panthers and Roosters. They are traveling to Sydney. This is a side where 2 weeks ago we had the Dragons penciled in for finals and they couldn't close off the Raiders when they're up 24-10 at halftime. Now, if the Raiders came out and kept them to a low-scoring game here and they won in similar fashion to what they did against the Roosters, then I could live with that. I could predict that almost. I could see it occurring at minimum, right? But to drop this kind of lead against a side that is not noted for their attack this season is so poor. Now, the past 3 weeks have shown us one thing about both of these sides. For the Raiders, they are clearly passionate and play for their coach, but they are probably lacking either experience in the spine or a star player in their backline. And for the Dragons, the majority of the 17 here is not ready to play finals. They are not 80-minute players. They do not have a tough underbelly, a hard edge, whatever you want to call it. And Flanagan must keep overhauling this roster. If we had some suspicions last round when they lost to the Eels, they were confirmed. If we had some suspicions the week before when they lost a rivalry game at home against the Sharks, they were confirmed again. I think the proof is in the pudding now for Shane Flanagan. He needs to keep making changes to this roster. The talent's there, but the mentality and the mindset isn't quite there for his 17 that he has at the moment. Overall, though, Winnie, I don't take too much further from this game, given we kind of already knew the winner would fall out of the top 8 in all likelihood. So a bit of a quiet one for me, mate. But how did you see it?
Yeah, the Dragons are a frustrating watch. They do have players such as Zach Lomax, and he skies and catches a bomb and sets up the first try, which is awesome. But then he'll also be the same guy that will throw a flick pass into row 5 or take the winger on the outside and get bundled into touch. They've just got players with a lot of questionable decision-making in this team. But after conceding how many, 5 tries were completely off the pace in the first half against Para, the Dragons were completely dialed in this time around, which is what you expect. And it's a home game for the Dragons, and they've been roused by Flano. And you expect, even though they've probably missed their opportunity to make finals, you expect a response from St. George. So it was going to plan to me. I was telling you, the Dragons were my favourite player of the weekend. I think everyone had a gutful of them. Everyone was wary of what the Raiders had done, but the Raiders wouldn't have enough in the tank to beat a truly switched on, a fair income St. George at home in this game. And then it's 24-6. And it's one of those games where I think to myself, I'm regretting not betting more of the extreme derivatives. Dragons are going to win this by 30, by 40, by 50. The commentator literally said, I'm just going to throw this out there. If the Dragons win by more than 76, they could make the finals even if Newcastle wins, which is a pretty, crazy notion. But the fact that it was being discussed because the Dragons did have 18 points in the first 16 minutes or whatever, that's the type of game it looked like. And yes, Canberra did get a couple of tries and it's a 14-point margin at halftime. But then straight away in the second half, the Dragons are making line breaks. And that's the immaturity of this team. Dragons make a clean line break and throw no-look pass out the back that actually ends up going to the Raiders, where you're probably scoring next play if you just take the tackle. And so the lack of grit, ultimately the Dragons didn't score in the whole second half. And probably, you probably still win and cover the line if you don't get that freakish moment. Personally, I'll tell you the truth. I'm sitting there, I'm on -2.5. Ride the best bets hard. I felt especially confident in that one, right? I had this sense of dread. I just knew a Raiders try was coming once the Raiders got that close. Once the Raiders got within 4, I'm just thinking there's no way that St. George hangs on and win by 4. So I actually wasn't surprised. But when you take a step back from it and say, Corey Horsburgh got the ball with 2.5 minutes to go, he kicked for himself. He admitted after the game that he shanked the kick, but somehow it ricocheted to a defender and just stuck to his hand and hip. And then he was able to gather it in and ground it. It's a fluky of all flukish tries. We've never won a best bet like that this year. We haven't won a best bet like that many years, but I'll cop that, of course, more than once a season when it's going to condemn my best bet. So pretty typical. And I'll say, well done, Canberra. Awesome home win against Penrith. I could understand that's your grand final. And then it's a bonus win, a gutsy win to go and beat the Roosters. But I didn't see this one coming to make it 3 straight in the trot to end the year. Fogarty came back in, which definitely helps steady this side. But ultimately, it's the toughness of Canberra keeping the Dragons scoreless second half, which kept them in with a chance. And as long as you're in with a chance, some random things can happen.
And that's the thing, right? It was their defense in the second half that kept them in the game and actually gave them an opportunity to get something fluky that happened for the final try. But I agree with you. Corey Horsburgh does that 50 times, 49 times, there's no result. And everyone's saying, why the hell is the prop kicking in a key moment of the game? But in this one time out of 50, it paid off for him. So well done to Corey and the Raiders. Game 5, mate. Cowboys beat the Bulldogs 44 points to 6. And I think you nailed this one because my prediction in the preview show was either side 1 to 12. And my rationale and my reasoning was it's an important game to both sides to secure the home final. Well, as it played out, both sides got the home final anyway. So not only was it a bad prediction, it gets worse for me there as well. But for the Bulldogs, actually a few concerns here. Like they limp into the finals now with two relatively big scorelines put past them with Manly and the Cowboys. I will say in the previous show, I did agree with you that the Cowboys are the side here with a little bit more upside. We saw that with their 8 line breaks to the Bulldogs too. And the Bulldogs really did struggle with that Matt Burton. Then we get to game day, they lose both their wingers. And I saw the Cowboys were underdogs. And I just thought, in line with your breakdown from the preview show, I think there's some value here. So I was happy to get on the Cowboys in this one. But in attack, they were just all over the Bulldogs. Their attack was so smooth in this game, I believe it actually overshadowed a really great defensive effort. It was a stark difference between what we saw last round against the Storm. Now, the Cowboys have locked up that home final. They will play the Knights. But where I'm a little bit iffy on the Cowboys, and this might be unfair, but I feel like their defense is attitude-based and situational. Round 1, we saw them with great defense against the Dolphins. Then they hold the Roosters to 16. They've held the Panthers to 6 and the Raiders to 4 at home this year. But there's also plenty of games, and you referenced one already, the Broncos game, where they haven't been very good defensively. And their attitude hasn't been the same as what we saw from them this round against the Doggies. So for me, the key to their finals is really, can we trust that the Cowboys will have the right mindset and attitude turning up defensively? And is it enough to believe that on sheer attitude alone, you can get it done? Because a side like the Storm or a strong defensive side like the Sharks, they've done the reps all year, right? We're not looking for, when we make a Storm or a Sharks prediction, we don't go, I think they'll be turned on defensively this round. We just expect it because they've got the reps. Whereas for the Cowboys, we're looking for situations or reasons why they should be turning up on defense. So there is a little bit of a question mark for me around that situation with them, mate. Break this game down for me and tell me, do you agree with my take on the Cowboys there?
Yeah, that's been the Cowboys all year. Like, you can't figure them out. You know what they're capable of in attack, but you expect that they should be a good defensive team. And I keep going back to, it was like easily a top 4, if not top 2 defensive team 2 years ago. They made it all the way to a home prelim. And I don't understand why it should be that different, especially in some good spots at home where the Cowboys have leaked points. And it just seems to me like they're not taking their opponents seriously and they're too casual. They just don't want to do the hard work. They'd rather try and outscore the opponent. It's awesome. You're going to have a great upside when you can, in any game, you can score 30 plus points. But if you really want to threaten for the comp, you actually have to be able to hold an opponent to under 3 tries sometimes. Whether the Cowboys can do it, they got a gift a week ago playing the Melbourne B team. They didn't keep them to a low score, but they didn't need to because they scored 38. Here, great defense, but it's a game where they blew the Doggies out. So you could argue that the Cowboys are finally switching on at the right time. Getting home for the finals certainly helps. But the reason I took North Queensland was it seemed like a really good spot for them, and they're playing full strength side where we knew that there was going to be no Burton, no Cherry for the Dogs, and then additionally other backline players were held out of this game, which also speaks to the fact that it wasn't probably as important of a game for the Dogs, perhaps because they knew worst case we're playing in Sydney anyway, whereas for the Cowboys, if worst case playing in Sydney is a much worse proposition, and it worked out pretty well for the Dogs. Where the concern's going to be is that everyone has loved the Dogs, I would say, from the midpoint of the year where people recognize that they were the real deal, and then have been everyone's favorite underdog, under the radar, fringe top 4 side. But now in the last 2 weeks, they've got smoked, and everyone's talked about the toughness and the defense of the Doggies. But what they give up to Manly last week, I want to say, like 36, 30, okay, 32 points. Yep, and 44 this week. So everything that people loved about the Doggies, it's kind of been missing. You never want to go into the finals on back-to-back losses, but they were bad spots coming home, playing a Manly team off a bad loss, and the Dogs had to come home from New Zealand. Like, that's a tough game, and a full-strength Manly side just gave it to them that night. And then this is a full-strength North Queensland side with a lot to play for, and the Doggies are under strength. So I feel like they are forgivable losses, which is why we were on best bets against the Dogs on both occasions, despite the fact that I do like Canterbury. So it comes back to, for next week, how real is changing momentum? Are the Dogs able to shake those results off and just say, look, we know what we're capable of for the bulk of this season, and we're playing in our house, and if we can defend that, we obviously get these important troops back, then let's give a real account of ourselves. I certainly wouldn't write the Bulldogs off, but I am definitely taking notice of North Queensland, because I know the ability this side has when they do put it all together.
Yeah, and that's the thing for the Bulldogs. What sort of response can we get? Because they were fantastic for 25 rounds, and realistically, they let themselves down by their standards in these last two rounds. Last round, they conceded 34 to Manly, which is funny because I guessed 32 and you said 36, so it was right in the middle of where we both were. Game 6, mate, this one was a little bit unexpected, but I do think in hindsight, we got what we should expect from both sides. Panthers beat the Titans 18 points to 12. Now, this line actually closed above 20. I was very confident in Panthers. I'll be honest, the -9.5 for Clarkey's collect was actually conservative. I had a separate play on them at a much larger line, and I did think they would cover it. But, for the Titans, I'll start with the Titans, actually. And I'm going to shock a lot of people here, but I mean, who cares? Like, maybe I'm just a jaded fan that's been around too long, but this is a side that we know that can turn up and compete with anyone on the day. Anyone on the day, I don't care. The Titans can turn up and compete. Even in 2017 against that unstoppable Melbourne Storm side, the Titans beat them. The only other team to beat them that year was the Eels. Like, we can beat anyone in our day.
38-36 in the most unexplainable result in NRL history.
Exactly right. The Roosters, like you said, in 2013, when we were paying $13 odds, the Titans can turn up and beat anyone on their given day. I suppose you can say that for any team realistically, but for the Titans, it's more so unexpected because they are overall poor. But you take the blinkers off and you don't just look at this one game. Like, awesome. They competed well in one game. What happened the last 4 weeks? It's the same old story. So it was a solid showing here, and I'm proud of the team. But I'm just not enthused by it because it's the same story for the Titans. The team we need to break down from this one, of course, is the Panthers. And I actually feel like they are in a bit of a tough spot here. They are not playing their best football. Now, they've almost rested this run home because the second half against South was a no-show. Then they lost to the Raiders and Storm. The game before that was a last-second win over the Eels. And they only just straight bypassed the Panthers at home. So we are going back to round 21, 6 weeks ago against the Dragons at Wollongong, when the Panthers truly played a full 80-minute performance and put their opponents to the sword. In 2023, I went back to round 21. They smashed 5 teams, did lose once to the Eels. In 2022, they were a bit shaky coming in. They won 3, lost 2 from round 21. And in 2021, they went 5-0, but did lose week 1 of the finals. So whilst their form is mediocre at this stage, they've still won the last 3 premierships, and it is comparable to their form when they came in the past 2 of 3 seasons there. But I will say this is the weakest Panthers side they've had since 2021, not primarily to the roster. The roster has weakened, of course, with the salary cap, not to a significant extent, but we can't undersell that. Nathan Cleary will be playing with one arm. Dylan Edwards' knee looks like it needs surgery on the PCL there, and that is 2 very key players for them. In all honesty, their form just hasn't been good enough for the past 6 weeks. Nathan Cleary there or not. So I do have a tiny question mark next to their credentials this year, just based on the length of time we've had between a real showing from them. As I said, man, 7 weeks ago in Wollongong, round 21, that's getting a long time ago. It really is. And they've just kind of just coasted into the finals here. They've done what they need to do, and they still get a home final, which sums up how bloody good they are, mate. So maybe I'm being too critical. What are your thoughts on my take around the Panthers in this game overall, please?
No, I appreciate that. It hasn't been an ideal run into the finals. You want to be hitting your straps and playing your best footy at this time of year. But there is definitely something to be said for a team that's clearly not playing their best, but still winning, which is what the Panthers have done, nearly every week. Although losing that game against Melbourne, we know how good Melbourne is, and Cleary did get injured in that one. The Raiders game, Penrith wasn't terrible. I feel like Canberra was very inspired, and we've seen a bit more from Canberra to see that they're a bloody tough side that can keep himself in the contest and won a tight one there. But the thing is, can Penrith flip it up a couple of gears in the finals? They absolutely can, because they've got that personnel that's so much experience together. This year's team isn't drastically different every year since making the GF in 2020, but definitely since winning it in 21. They've lost a couple of rep stars each year, but they've retooled. They do seem to unearth some gun players that can, step up. So Penrith's exactly where they want to be. This was a type of game that was an absolute banana peel game, despite the fact it was the last regular season home game at Panther Park, and it was Old Boys Day as well. It's just an opponent that it's hard to get sky high for. And I was saying to you, are you getting excited here? Like, the Titans led the game 6-4 at halftime, but you were kind of saying, don't think we're going to win. And even if we do, it's been a bad season. So it's kind of sad that they've beaten the enthusiasm right out of you this year, Clarkey, because you expect better. And it is weird. You look at the team list this week, and Dave Fafito was the most in-demand free agent in the comp just a few weeks ago. He's out for the Titans. You think that should really hurt them, because he's the type of player, when you're paying a guy close to $1 million, like an edge forward, those are the type of players that you need if you're ever going to be a chance against the big boys, right? The guys that can be a match winner for you. And Fafita goes out, and somehow the team all plays better. Because what I go back to is me. I'm selfish. I think about me. I really liked the Titans a week ago on Sunday against the Knights, and we were getting 10.5 points, and they scored the first try. And we're useless all game. There was no desperation. There was no toughness. And then the Titans got blown out. And then I said on Tuesday, I just have this funny feeling that in the game, no one gives the Titans a chance. They'll actually show up and fight hard. And they bloody did. They gave everything, the Titans. And fell short of the win, but it was close. A beautiful solo try by Campbell. Keanu Kinney was out again for this match, but it gave Campbell the chance to shine. I think you and I said that last week. Why didn't Campbell go to fullback last week and bring Tanner Boyd to the half? So the Titans kind of did this week what I wanted a week ago. Probably did foil many punters. Unless you took the $1.10 head-to-head, you probably didn't get out of this game alive with your same gamer or your multi, because every other bet would have been laying the points with the Panthers, 13 plus, or same gamers. I think did Toto get a double in the end? Obviously not many try scorers when it's 3 plays 2, but nothing to be too concerned about. I would be more, in some ways, I'm actually more impressed by teams that are clearly not playing their best and still win, as opposed to detract from them, because I know how much better Penrith can be.
Yeah, we only have to remember Nathan Cleary's back next week, so that will immediately make them, I want to say, 3 times better to what they've shown in this game against the Titans. They had to win. They did it, so kudos to the Panthers there. Not much more we can say.
You did comment, though. It's probably worth just mentioning that you did have the top try scorer for the season. 24 tries he got, and that was slightly interesting because Dom Young got rested, but AKP was 3 tries ahead of Kyle Feldt. Kyle Feldt got a double in the previous game and dropped one where he could have scored. So if Kyle Feldt gets a hat trick, he could dead heat AKP. In the end, AKP actually gets a long-range try for the Titans relatively late in the game. But at that point, he'd already had the crown. But imagine if it was 23 tries all before AKP did that. Look, that's one shining light. You had a absolutely electric outside back that had scored, 24 meat pies in a season is an impressive feat.
Yeah, he's an incredible attacking player. On my Titans podcast made in the offseason, when I named my strongest 17 for the Titans, I actually don't think he's going to be there next year for other reasons. So a bit of a spoiler there to anyone who's a Titans fan. It's a big call, but I'm going to make it, mate. Let's move to games.
Who's on the wing instead of him?
It'll be Jojo Fafita and Philip Sammy for me. The defensive liability of him and Brian Kelly. AKP. Yeah, we can still score points. We've always been able to score points. No doubt, Alofiana Conpro does it better than other wingers for us. but his defense with Phil Sammy this year has been one of the most frustrating things I've ever watched as a footy fan. I held my tongue on the Titans podcast, mate, for 25 rounds. I'm ready to let my thoughts be known there. It's really bad. And then just quickly, Carter Gordon and I think AJ Brimson as the centers, because it gives us more attacking options inside there. We have 2 5'8s kind of as centers, and then 2 hopefully defensive wingers in Jojo and Sammy. I think that's what we need to succeed, if I'm honest. But yeah, I'll break it all down in the Titans podcast for any Titans fans in our live right now. Last game of the round, mate, because we've already started with the Knights and Dolphins game. Sharks beat Manly 40 points to 20. And I want to start with a shout out to our man, Nicole, who when he was about to announce it last week and we kind of, were backstage and he's on the screen, no one can see my mouth, but I said, Hamoli Lakwatu. I know he's going to say Hamoli. He did. Hamoli gets over. Then I start feeling myself, and I had Britton Nakora to that mix as well because they're both in the Dally M hunt. He goes with him at $10 odds, so that was awesome. Hopefully some people went on that one with us there. But onto the game itself, I just thought Manly were really underwhelming in all aspects. And really, after we saw the Doggies smoked against the Cowboys, we probably could have predicted this. I didn't. I still stuck with my prediction of Manly in hindsight. Again, there's a lot of hindsight this week. I missed something there, and I should have factored that into this game. This was an important game for Manly, though. They are very strong at home this year, where they've recorded wins against the Roosters, Storm, Panthers, the big 3. And whilst this wasn't a no-show in the classical sense of those words that we use on this show, it was very poor by a team that a lot of people have marked as their 2024 smoky, myself included. So now they go to a core stadium where we know the Bulldogs have a pretty formidable record this year, only losing their last 2 games, prior to that undefeated. And when you break these 2 sides down, the Sharks just looked hungrier. They just looked hungrier in every aspect and that's what shocked me. Manly here are playing for a home final. Sharks are playing for, if they win, they go to Melbourne. If they lose, they go to Melbourne. They actually didn't have more to play for. Manly did, but the Sharks looked hungrier. So that was a little bit strange there. What I particularly loved about the Sharkies here was they only missed 17 tackles and they only had 7 ineffective tackles. That is both league best for this round. We know Manly are a strong attacking team. But if you are going to go to Melbourne and you do want to beat the Storm in Melbourne, you're not going to do it with your attack. You need to do it on the back of your defense, like they did earlier this year, actually, when they won with just Daniel Atkinson there. So the fact their defense was sharp in this game with a lot of really great tackles and not many missed, I think that helps them. I just think Manly really hurt their chances here against the Bulldogs side. They could have met in form. They could have met them at home after beating them at a core only 2 weeks ago, full of confidence with Tom Trbojevic to return. Instead, they made a Bulldogs side where now the Seagulls are kind of 1-1 since they last met the Doggies. So I think they'll let an opportunity slip here. I think they're capable of beating the Sharkies. How costly is it? I don't know. Like, if they go to a core next weekend and beat the Doggies like they did last weekend, then we probably won't look back on this game with much. But if they do get into a battle with the Doggies and the Doggies' defensive hard edges back there and they're at a core stadium and they lose by 2 points, I'm going to sit here and go, yeah, they let a huge opportunity slip because that could have been a 2-point swing if it was at Brookvale instead. So I don't know how costly it is, Winnie. I think we'll have to wait until the recap show to break that down next week, mate. But we do need to know, how did you see this game overall?
Well, that's why I took Manly, because you knew you win, you stay at your home ground, and you avoid going to an opponent home ground. But it's not, I don't think it's too frightening to go across town to a core. Had the Cowboys occupied 6th, maybe there would have been more desperation by Manly to avoid a trip to Townsville, but it probably wouldn't have mattered anyway. The other reason I took Manly was not that I thought that Cronulla would no-show, but you get that free roll that Cronulla may not worry about this game because there was no way to improve their season positioning. We've seen teams like Melbourne rest everyone. We've seen teams like the Roosters have their finals hopes obliterated, not entirely, but dealt massive blows. And you're going to put all your best players out there in harm's way for Cronulla. But when I thought about it a bit more, I mean, you have to name your team on Tuesday. You've got 4 reserves. At that point in time, Cronulla has to prepare all week like they need to win. Because if the Roosters or Penrith are upset, then Cronulla would really want to win this game. And by the time that those results have played out, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 24 hours before the game you can change the team. So when Penrith wins, that's what ensures that Cronulla's locked into fourth. It's too late. I had this in my mind, so it's my mistake if I was wrong, that Cronulla could see that and could pull 2 starters Saturday night and change it. But is that not the case because of the 24-hour rule? Or you're
So
not
at
certain
24 hours, you cut your team down to 2 on the extended bench.
Oh, but you can cut 2 more on the day.
Yeah, but as long as it's before the
want.
24-hour mark, you can change between the 4 that you name.
Yes. So Cronulla would not have been able to rest 4 players, but still could have rested 2 on game day.
Yes.
And you just don't know if a couple of key players, like whatever, it could be like a Will Kennedy or something's a bit sore. All right, we're fourth if we lose, we're fourth if we win. So let's pull him out this week. I don't want my money on a team that has nothing to play for. But I was never saying it was a sure thing. I rate Cronulla better than Manly, and Turbo was out. So I was playing with fire a little bit. And then it became very evident in this game that Cronulla is a good team off a bad loss because, of course, Cronulla blew a massive lead at home against the Warriors last week and really did not want to go into the finals on the back of back-to-back defeats and disappointing performances. When you've just brought Nico back and you're integrating him in, the last thing you want to do is bring Nico back. Here's the keys. You're playing 7 again. Oh, we lost. Think about how much second guessing is going to go into next week. Make this game important, even if there's nothing to play for on the ladder, which we're not going to know until the night before. Let's make it. We want to win because we want to establish our style of footy with our star, with our marquee man there, and we just want to get the reps because we've got an almighty game and a high importance game next week. You see it go all the way back to the Spoon Bowl. The bye probably came at a terrible time for the Tigers, who are on a 2-game win streak. I questioned why Para would have tried so hard against the Dragons. There's something to be said for just giving your very best the week before an important game and then just kind of being in that mode. So that's what Cronulla did, and that they showed that, Manly, they're this team that has a high upside, a good ability that can be shown on occasions, like when Manly lost to the Tigers. They really turned it on against the Doggies. But why did Manly lose to the Tigers? How did Manly lose by 20 at home here? It's because they also rate themselves too much, I think, sometimes after a confidence-boosting win and have these head-scratching losses. Now, in the finals, when we get to the preview Tuesday, and I think we're going to do a final special Thursday night, everybody should be dialed in. Nobody should be overconfident. Nobody should look past their opponents. You generally evaluate every team as if it's, obviously it is must win, but as if they're going to be at their best or close to it. So Manly's best and Turbo comes back in. That's a completely different proposition. But tough result for me, but I have to just say it's a bad call there going against Cronulla, who's clearly are superior to Manly when Manly doesn't have all their guns.
And I feel like for me as well, mate, when I look back at a lot of the games with hindsight this week, there was things I missed. There was little cues that could have shifted who I was predicting. So overall, it was a tough week. And that just sums up this regular season, mate. It really does. As soon as you start to apply logic into your breakdowns and think you found the right tip and the right reasons, the NRL just throws it in your face and says, it's just so unpredictable, which is, to your point, why I'm very keen for finals, mate, because we can genuinely expect both sides at their best, and we can make an even, prediction or pick based on that as well, mate. Any final updates or anything you want to plug before we close the show today?
Let me confirm the final special. We might get some special markets and stuff for Thursday night, but I'll confirm that on Tuesday. I can't really believe it. I'm shattered still for my Finns is my overwhelming thought here. I'm very disappointed on the best bet results in the last couple of weeks. We pulled the record all the way back to, we were 49-49, and then we've had 2 losing weeks of best bets in a row, which hurts a lot. Finals to come. I think we did go 6 or 7-0 in the finals last year. So see what we can do. It's an exciting time of year, but it's also you just realize how quickly the season comes and goes. But let's enjoy the most meaningful matches coming ahead. And I hope everyone has a good week as well in the meantime. So thanks for tuning in. As always, we'll see you on Tuesday.